that arrangement, and by the way, it was not always like that, you know? It was not always like that. The United States used to be, initially was very skeptical or even recognizing Israel historically, you see? Because initially that was more of a British project. But after British became less of a global power, the United States inherited a lot of these legacies, right? But even then, the US was relatively balanced in the past. It's only in recent years that Israel has managed to develop a lobbying organization within the United States, which shows you how government can also be very weak. So what the lobbying organization does, AIPAC, it basically terrorizes people that are running for Congress, in the United States, has a lot of money, and they find out what is your view on the Middle East. If you're not 100% Israel, then they're going to sponsor somebody who is either running against you or whom they will get to run against you, you see? So they pack the Senate, the US Congress, with people that are basically biased. And that's part of the problem, of course, because you cannot have a genuine peace if one side is totally biased toward one side, you see? So that's a special type of situation that does not apply too much in the case of Uganda. But you make the same point today, which is similar to what the sister that spoke at the end, again, is making. What do we offer? What do we have to offer? What does, international role play? I think we have tremendously underestimated what we have been able to accomplish so far. The Museveni of the last 5 years is not the same Museveni of the 35 previous years. Qualitatively, very, very different. It is very significant when China is refusing to give you $3 billion. And that did not just come out of nowhere, that the Chinese leadership woke up one morning and said, you know what, we are not feeling like giving $3 billion to Museveni. That came through the work of people domestically and in diaspora. So those protests have had significant impact. $3 billion is a lot of money. The World Bank is no longer giving any fresh loans to Uganda as of 2023. That is very significant. And that also came from all the work that all of us collectively have been doing in diaspora. So in fact, I take the opposite position. I take the position that we have had tremendous impact. What do we have to offer to the outside world? We have the oil. It's not Museveni's oil. The oil has to be piped out of the country. China knows that if the government, if the population is hostile to Museveni, there is no way can you use that pipeline in peace to get the oil out of Uganda. Think about that. An unpopular government, a leadership that is widely detested and deservedly so, how are they going to be able to use that pipeline without any disruption? Are you going to, 1,000 miles pipeline? You're going to be able to put soldiers to guard that entire pipeline all the way to the coast in Tanzania? It's not possible. So it's very easy to disrupt that pipeline. And it's likely going to be disrupted if the government is not popular, you see? And these are the things that the international community, they're weighing and they're realizing this government has become so toxic. Why do I want to invest $3 billion in a pipeline that cannot be safe from a population that does not want this government? So we have many things that are actually working in our favor. Obviously, Museveni is not going to be talking about this. So just because he's not talking about it, it does not mean These are very critical things. He talks about the propaganda that he thinks can aid him and spread his propaganda and the myth. But these are things that we need to talk about. So these are very significant. No more fresh money from the World Bank. No $3 billion for the pipeline. When we hear about Qatar investing, that's why I said, I want more details on this. This is a campaign that we must launch. Any opportunity, any news we hear of any new potential significant investment, let's mobilize and dedicate ourselves to disrupting that. We're not saying don't invest. We're saying wait until there is a government of the people, by the people, for the people in place in Uganda. And we can put that government. Do we have evidence that that government can be put in place? Of course. As I said earlier, look at the numbers that show up when Bobby Wine goes on a national tour, compared to the people that are brought in by buses to Museveni's tour. We are not the only ones who are observing this. The West are very keen on their investments in Africa, whether they're already there or whether they're planning to invest. So they watch those numbers too. So when they see these numbers, the hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands coming up when they're mobilized by Bobby Wine, they say, this is the man of the present and the future. And Muhoozi and Museveni are the people of the past. They can think for themselves, you see? So that's what I want to stress, the fact that we should not underestimate what we have been able to accomplish so far. So when it goes to what Joe said, that was not so much of a question. It was more of a statement that I agree with 100%. And as I said, it relates to what I said earlier on in terms of some economists believe we can have developed economies in African countries within 15 to 20 years, which is not a long time, given the set of some of the issues that Joe raised. We need to be able to manufacture. Now, how will manufacture be financed? Not by the World Bank, because the World Bank is essentially controlled by the West, and the West is not going to finance industrialization in Africa so that you can come and compete with them in manufacture. You see? Now, you see how the US is now sometimes crying, like Trump, President Trump, with the tariff he's putting against China. Who financed industrialization in China? It was the United States, when all these companies went there and located in China. They're not going to do the same thing again. So they won't do it for Africa. Now, people have been talking about BRICS being maybe a new source of financing, because you still need money, you're right, Joe, to build these factories in Africa so that we can use our resources to create these high-paying jobs in Africa. So we are going to need financing. Whether it's going to become, in fact, we have been too easy on China. We are busy criticizing the West all the time. That's one thing I can say, the big mistake we've made. We have not criticized China enough. China has used our resources to industrialize, to become powerful, yet China is not helping us to build factories in African countries as well. So that's the engagement we need to have with China. Okay, so now I don't recall who asked the question about, I think two people raised the question about the African Union, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. The African Union risks being totally undermined. And let me give you an example. Sorry.
Sister Mimi.
Okay, very good. The African Union risks being totally undermined by its inability to deliver. Cannot even resolve the war in Sudan. Think about that. In South Sudan. Think about that. In Congo. In Cameroon. We don't even hear about that war in Cameroon anymore. So what is the function of the African Union? You're not able to get financing to industrialize Africa. What is the function? You're not leading us toward a United States of Africa. What is the function? So these are very problematic questions, and they risk being completely undermined and perhaps even replaced. I've always, in discussion with my friends, had this idea that whenever they have, and of course the authorities might make this difficult for you, whenever they have the annual meeting of the AU, we should have our own version of the People's AU meeting, where we have civil society, we have people knowledgeable in economics, in politics, in integration, in environmental issues, where we also have an African Union summit in parallel to them to show them what an effective AU can actually accomplish. So I agree with you totally. And that's the problem ECOWAS is now having in West Africa. When Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso exposed ECOWAS as a tool of French hegemony, and they withdrew, and now they formed this alliance of Sahel states, and they seem to be much more effective. There's a danger that more countries may withdraw from ECOWAS and join the alliance of Sahel states. Now, if AU is not careful, eventually we might see another organization that can deliver much more better than AU. And we can see some countries leaving the AU to join that alliance. And then I think I sort of answered Magani's question by combining it with my response to Tadeo. I think we in fact do know what to offer these countries. And I think we may not sometimes state it explicitly, but clearly they cannot get the oil so long as Museveni and Muhoozi are still running the country, because the pipelines are very vulnerable. We are not going to allow the pipelines to be undisturbed while they're financing the killing of Ugandans. That just won't happen. So we need to make it clear to them that yes, you can get the oil, but you can only get the oil when we have a government which is popular and supported by the people of Uganda. And of course, that government is the government of the National Unity Platform. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Almadi, for your submission, and your presentation is very, very fundamental in our endeavors to pursue and find solutions on how we're going to liberate our country, Uganda. Yes. And shedding a light on how other countries are doing in their political, social, and economic affairs, and looking into what is happening with Ibrahim Traoré and different countries in Africa that are struggling to liberate themselves from the yoke of
neocolonialism
and those that really captured, that are really draining the resources and denying them the right to develop themselves economically. Yes. And when we see Ibrahim Traoré joining with other countries or states within the Sahel region or alliance to fight terrorism and other economic intrusion from the Western powers, we see a light at the end of the tunnel. That is really good to really feed our mind on what is happening elsewhere. But when we look at our region, Uganda, the East African region, that is made of 7 countries, and we also bring it down to our country, Uganda, and concentrate on Museveni, the role he has played in the 7 countries that started as 4 and then went on increasing in numbers to an extent that they included South Sudan, the new country state that was being created. Now, we're faced with the challenge of finding a silver bullet to liberate ourselves from the capture that has happened in our country for the last 40 years. What must we do as Ugandans? Because we understand that it's only Ugandans. We can know We can cry out to the Western powers. There's a role they're going to play. There are some taps they are going to close down. But what they can do is too limited to what the international laws allow them to do, because they cannot directly get into the sovereign states. Either they will use it, they will go into those sovereign states using the indigenous people, the citizens of those countries, and support them from the back door to cause that change that the citizens want. Now, in a population of 46.9 million Ugandans, okay, what must Ugandans do using a non-violent method? Because the other one would be having a protracted war, guerrilla war, similar to what the past leaders have always been using to bomb themselves into power. But this generation want to create that change, in that if we bring in someone through a ballot or a civil uprising, then we maintain the power as the citizens of that country to also call that person out and remove them whenever is not delivering. But it's hard, like it has been, to remove people like Museveni unless we use the military to wage a protracted guerrilla war like he has done. So what other non-violent methods can we use as Ugandans to raise the numbers, to break that barrier and the dark screen in front of our eyes, to end this tyranny and the dictatorship in Uganda? Because my concentration should be so much I want to concentrate so much on Uganda and the region.
I can respond to that.
Yes, please, if you may.
All right, so.
Professor, can I add to that? Because
yes, of course. Yes, go ahead, Mimi.
To interrupt you.
No, not at all, not at all.
Yeah, I wanted to ask kind of the same question, but it's similar to what he's asking, is that realistically, will we ever see another peaceful revolution removing a dictator on the African soil apart from the Arab Spring and Egypt? That is what I wanted to back up his questions, but also to add on the other thing is that one of the things that I think we lack right now versus the people back in Uganda, that in the 80s, we had many of these land academician and whatever having connections whereby they were able to diplomatically talk with countries, African countries, with these European countries. We have it right now, but there's, like, for example, what Sister Demi was saying, where we can give them and tell them we have these resources, can you support us in this thing? We are lacking that mechanism. And like, for example, in Namibia, when they were going to get independence, and that's a long time ago, for example, they were able to use Libya to transport their weapons. They were able to go to Tanzania for training. Many African countries that were looking for independence had these other places where they could go. In Uganda, we lack where we can take people for civic education, simple civic education. That is practically impossible. So I'm thinking that is lacking, but can we get a peaceful revolution on the African soil after Egypt and the Arab Spring to remove a dictator? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry, Professor. Guys, because of time, the last two will be just seconds, then we roll over to Professor, and then there'll be no more hands. Sister Polly, you have just seconds. Sister Miriam, just seconds, please, and then we roll over because of time. Thank you. Sister Polly, yes, just in seconds, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Dorcas, for having this forum. And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, all of you, wherever you are. I'm so grateful, Professor Milton, that you joined us. Mine is kind of easy. It's a simple question. I'm just wondering, we all know that this criminal regime is trying to pass on the UPDF Amendment Act on Tuesday next week. I'm just wondering, what kind of advice can you give us, the opposition? Should we attend that meeting in the parliament? What benefits are we going to get or out of that meeting? Or should we boycott it? I just want to know the benefits and the disadvantages. Thank you.
Thanks. Sister Mariam, please.
Okay, hello everyone. First of all, I want to answer to some of the questions that what ways can we have for a peaceful transition maybe. First of all, we are running some campaign of doing flyers and posters. We want to do as we did when they arrested Bobby in Arua. That one time the government woke up when all the streets, all everywhere is painted Free Bobby Wine. All the streets have posters and flyers Free Bobby Wine. And the same thing we did when we were doing March to Parliament. We're having a small budget of people helping us to do those flowers, but it is done in
Sorry, thank you so much, sis. That's a conversation we will carry on the platform during the week. For the sake of time, I'll roll the mic back to Professor and then come back to have the meeting concluded. Yes, Professor, over to you.
Okay, sure. All right, so I think in terms of the question by Pauline and the amendment act that is coming up in Parliament, Parliament, is rigged. The Parliament is rigged with supporters of the regime. But obviously, that has not stopped people from protesting. When you remember the age limit, when the dictator wanted to remove that, the protest, while it did not block the age limit from being removed, since he has a rigged parliament with his partisans, it generated global media coverage. So if I was to offer any recommendation, I would say that the protest should be there so that we can generate more media coverage on Uganda. So that's what I would say in terms of the advice. My own attitude is that the regime can amend whatever it wants until kingdom come. But if we focus on the things we need to be doing, this regime is on its way out with its fictitious, superficial, and rigged partisan parliament. So that would be my response to that question. Now, in terms of Mimi, and I don't think I got the name, but the user name on the screen was Prezzo, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to turn the question the other way around. And I would like all of us to ponder about this issue very, very seriously, right? And my question is this, that we need to think about very seriously. And we don't need to respond to this question right now. But if armed struggle was the only way to remove the terrorist regime of Muhoozi and Museveni, would you oppose or would you support armed struggle? So that's a question we need to think about very, very carefully. And we need to weigh the consequences of armed struggle. We need to weigh that against the destruction that has been caused by Muhoozi and Museveni all these decades in Uganda. Not in Uganda, by the way. It has spilled to neighboring countries with immense suffering also in Rwanda, in Congo, in South Sudan, all the way to Somalia and even Central African republic. So we need to think about that question very carefully. Gandhi, of course, was a lifelong proponent of nonviolent resistance. I have some issues with Gandhi on his attitude toward Africans while he was in South Africa, right? But that's a discussion for a different day. You know, he had very obnoxious attitudes about Africans. But nonetheless, he's renowned for promoting effective nonviolence resistance against British imperialism in India. So this is what Nyerere once said. Nyerere said, I support Gandhi, but I am not a proponent of nonviolence philosophically. I'm a proponent of nonviolence strategically. So what he meant was that if nonviolence can accomplish the goal, why should we use violence? That's what Nyerere said. Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress, they used nonviolent approach to fight against apartheid in South Africa. It was only after the apartheid regime committed the massacre at Sharpeville when it became clear that this regime was not going to be removed without a struggle, and it would be inviting our people to suicide by not exploring all options. So Mandela went and he got trained in Ethiopia and in the mountains in Algeria with the FNL, which was the liberation army that defeated the French for Algeria's independence. He got properly trained, he read books, and then he came back. And he said, even now that we have adopted armed struggle, we're going to be very strategic. We don't want to go after civilians. We're going to only target government buildings and entities. And that's what he had been doing. Eventually, it was the CIA, we learned later on, that tipped off the South Africans about Mandela, where he was, his hideout and the disguises he was using. And that's how Mandela was locked up and spent 27 years in incarceration. Now, if you have not heard the speech he made at the Rivonia trial, Rivonia, R-I-V-O-N-I-A, please go to YouTube and listen to that speech. The recording, the quality is not that great, but you can hear him out and listen to it. It's worth it. And that speech saved his life because supposedly the judge had already determined that this man was going to die by hanging. But when he heard Mandela, and first of all, his lawyers did not want him to defend himself. Said it's not good for you to speak. Had he not spoken, he would not have lived. He was going to be executed. He broke it down. And I'd like you to listen to that because then you can compare it with our situation in Uganda. And he gave the statistics of the state terrorism against the people of South Africa. And then he gave the economics and the education and all of that, the malnutrition, you know. And then he said, at some point, I came to the conclusion that you would be abandoning your people if you did not pursue another method. But even before I adopted armed resistance, I read all the books, and he mentioned all the great thinkers in military strategy from the West and from the East. And then I synthesized what is appropriate for this particular struggle. And that's how I adopted the struggle. And I would do it all over again. You see? And I'm not fighting to replace white tyranny with African tyranny. We want to build a democratic society. You see? So the rationalization and the logic he offered saved his life. And of course, he lived to see apartheid officially end in South Africa. Although now they have to deal with economic apartheid, but that's another issue. So I say this to suggest that we cannot, I don't think it's appropriate to say that this is the form that the struggle in Uganda should take. I think everybody, of course, who in his right mind would deny a nonviolent approach? You see? Who would deny that? But the Constitution of Uganda allows all means, and it's in the Constitution. So we should say that we should not abandon the Constitution of Uganda. We should use all measures that the Constitution of Uganda allows us to use to end dictatorship in Uganda. And in terms of neighboring countries offering support to pass movements and all that, it's not that they're not doing that. We have to make the case for them to do it. Because when you get support from somewhere, you are not getting the support prior to you making the argument and convincing the people that support you that this cause is worth supporting. So, for example, have we made it clear to our sisters and brothers in Kenya that your struggle is our struggle, but our struggle should also be your struggle? We saw how they struggled, the youth, the digital basically pushed resistance against the tax hike when they're already paying the bleeding blood just to survive, and you're taxing them more. They had a resistance, well organized and very effective. The government had to back off. Now, have we made the argument to these same young people that Museveni and Muhoozi, the arms that they use to kill us, to torture is in Uganda, they come to Mombasa. Should we allow these resources to be coming unmolested through Kenya to come and terrorize us in Uganda? If we convince the young people in Kenya, they might say, you know what, this is right. They support our struggle. Let's support their struggle. Why should we allow these weapons of torture to be ferried from Mombasa unmolested? You see? That's a very long, whether it's by rail or by road, you cannot protect that entire thing. So in the interest of supporting our sister and brother in Uganda, am I willing to do something? Those are the kind of things that we need to be doing, but it's up to us to instill these thoughts in the Kenyans who may want to help us, and they're saying, what can I do? They can actually do a lot. They can do a lot, and we can do a lot in supporting the Kenyan struggle. That's the way we have to start thinking now, to think outside the box. And there's a lot that we can benefit from thinking outside the box. So I hope I've covered all the questions.
Yes, Professor, thank you. Thank you so much. Comrade Ismail, I don't know if you did have one last one. Otherwise, guys, we are actually closing, and very sketchy, tiny closing remarks, maybe 3.
Sure. I mean, if Ismail has one, I'll take it, and then I can leave. But I'll take it if you have a question.
Okay. Comrade Ismail, did you or? Okay, I think your mic is muted. Sister Prosi, is your mic unmute? If you just wanted to put out just a second submission, that's fine, because we are closing the space, the Zoom, guys. Okay, because your mics are muted. Oh, sorry, I think you muted again. Yes, sister.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. and to all the comrades who have joined. There is nothing that the doctor has not mentioned, and to all of us who are change-seeking people, it is upon us. Doctor mentioned, what do we do during, before, and after? That is very, very paramount. So us doing what we're supposed to do, and people on the ground, it is very, very, very important. If anyone listening, we can't dilute, but these are things that we have been talking about. You know, at times hearing from someone else, maybe it means sense to some people, but these are things that you already know what to do and how to do it. So nobody's going to do it for us. If doctor has spoken and you have listened, what actions are we planning to do? I mean, let's plan not to do it, not to plan the day is today and then we're planning today. No, it is a process. So, Doctor, thank you so much. All those who have attended, let's keep the message going. Those who cut out clips, please do it. Do it. Do it. Let the message not stay here, because we have those who are not able to be on Facebook, because I was on Facebook, and those who are not able to attend the Zoom directly. Please, this is now that what are you doing? This is the little that you can do. If you can cut out clips, those days people used to do so, and then they would instead share it with me, and I'm like, okay. And then I hear myself speaking, and they're like, "Is it you?" I'm like, "Yes." Yes. And I'm like, okay. Like, so let's spread the message, because we need a country.
Yes,
Us staying
absolutely.
quiet, doctor wouldn't be here and be like, okay, what does he lose? But because he knows the roots, and that's where we belong. So everybody, thank you for joining in. Doctor, whenever you get time, please come back. We
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
This is my home. I'm always happy to come back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sisters and brothers. Have me, just give me good notice and I will be back again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
Thank you so much.
All right. Kali. Byebyo. Embeera yeeyo munnayuganda buvunaanyizibwa abo si bwa mulala wabula bubo okutereeza ensi, okutereeza eggwanga lyo, n'abalala banatusanga ne tusobola okutuukiriza ebigendererwa byaffe okwegobako Nakyemalya n'okuzimba ensi yaffe, ensi enno gye tuneenyumirizaamu.